less than ideal soil conditions in many fields, corn planting is a challenge this spring.
Well, that's why we're standing over here by the trees, because it's too darn muddy to be out in our fields. So it's tough, but the sad thing is a lot of guys, well, sometimes like me, say, oh, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. So we wanted to talk a little today about corn planting issues right now. You're gonna be in your tractor and pulling the planter through the field one of these first days if you haven't been there already. So we'll just talk about a few things we want you to watch for. It's the most important day on the farm when you're putting that corn in the ground. You know, we used to say, well, the day that you plant, that's when you have maximum yield potential. I really think it's the day before you ever start planting.
When it's still in the bag.
Right, because you haven't screwed anything up yet. So,
well, at least we'd hope not. But well, let's talk about some of those things. Now, one of the things this year that's going to be a big concern in the spring, we've got fields that didn't get tilled last fall that normally would be, especially in continuous corn. When you've got some corn stalk residue out there, you need to make sure you're getting that stuff cleanly cut. Otherwise, what we see many times in reduced tillage situations is we end up with hair pinning of residue, where you just bend that stalk down in the furrow, but never cut all the way through. You don't get a good placement of your seed. You're gonna have issues throughout the year, especially if you don't get ideal moisture conditions, so you have to watch that. What I would suggest is doing some form of tillage out there with coulters. If you have a coulter cart, or if you have something like a Salford machine like we're running on our farm with individual coulters, whatever you do, just make sure you're not hairpinning residue. If you are, you need to wait before you plant or you're going to have a disaster.
Well, what it basically comes down to is seed to soil contact. It's something that I don't think gets emphasized enough. If you don't have soil around, basically wrapped around your seed, and it's in contact well with that seed, what we call seed to soil contact, you just aren't going to have great germination. You're not going to have a great stand. And it is ultra critical. It's more important than ever to have a good stand, because what's the price of corn today? I mean, it is ridiculously high. You know, corn at $4 a bushel, that's one thing. But I mean, you buy a bag of seed corn now, it's $200, maybe $250. It's crazy. So you got to try to get every possible seed planted. So that seed to soil contact thing is just huge.
Well, on our new planter that we've actually got discs that are offset just a little bit, so they aren't just right together. And when you have the discs right together opening up that V trench, you end up with more chance of a sidewall smear.
Yeah, but it can happen anytime if the conditions aren't fit. That's another thing we want you to watch for. If you're getting that sidewall smear where literally it's mudding the side on that sidewall, a lot of times it will stay that way. When the ground dries out, you end up with hard slabs right there, and it forces your roots to grow down and chokes off a lot of roots. You have more lodging problem, you have reduced yield, and it's all because the ground just wasn't fit when you were planting.
And some of that too is we don't want those roots to get burned off either by over applying pop-up fertilizer and by having too much salt in that furrow.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this over the years, but I see so many cases where guys put on too much pop-up fertilizer or drop it directly onto the seed, and they end up actually hurting yield rather than helping yield. Well, the last thing you want any investment to do is to cost you money. I mean, you can do that well on Wall Street if you want to stick some money out there and just, you know,
let's not talk about that. That's a sore subject.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, you're investing money in fertilizer and putting it in furrow because it's supposed to help you. But if you get too much salt out there, our general guideline is 5 pounds of salt per acre in a 30-inch row. That's the maximum, and that's on medium textured soils. If you've got sandy soil and you have almost no rain, you might want to cut it back even from that.
Well, the other thing that I'm thinking about all the time in the furrow is protecting against secondary insects. You may need to put a little extra insecticide in furrow. Make sure you're set up for that in your planter if you've got some of those fields. It doesn't cost very much money to put on something like Capture LFR or Regent or something like that. You can use a relatively low rate to protect against secondary insects. Just don't forget about it on your farm.
Well, there are a lot of things that we want you to watch for out in your fields right now. Just remember, when you're planting that corn, you've got a lot of control over what's happening, and you can decide, maybe I need to wait a day, maybe I need to adjust my planter a little bit. Just do the very best you can, because once you've planted that seed, I mean, there's really no turning back. Well, I guess there is if you want to replant, but I don't really want to replant. So just get off your tractor, check things out a little bit, do the very best you can this spring. We just gave you a bunch of things to watch for. There are many others too, but I think those are tremendously important right now.
Well, the other thing to take a look at is weeds. And if you've got something like our Weed of the Week, you need to get it under control right at planting time. We'll show you more right after this.